a massively consequential military operation happening under immense secrecy this weekend. The U.S. military successfully targeting 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities. President Trump ordering the strikes following years of insisting, as did Presidents Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Biden, that Iran must never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. The Trump administration attempting to reach a deal for months.
This military operation against Iran's nuclear sites has shaken the foundations of American foreign policy and domestic politics alike. Accusations of unconstitutional war, fears of broader Middle East escalation, and mixed support within parties reveal deep fractures. While officials deny regime change aims, Trump's own posts muddy the waters. The world watches as the U.S. navigates this high-stakes gamble. Drop your take below. Are these strikes justified or reckless? What's next for peace and war?
In mid-April, the president issuing a 60-day deadline to the regime. Make a deal or else. On the 61st day, with no deal reached, the Israeli military beginning waves of attacks, incapacitating Iranian air defense systems and carrying out assassinations of several top nuclear scientists and other high-ranking military officials. Late Saturday night, well after American military assets safely exited Iranian airspace, President Trump announcing the surprise mission first on Truth Social, then delivering remarks from the White House.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Raisin Kane, on Sunday describing the highly complex operation employing bunker busters to take out the nuclear facilities.
A large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. And just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon.
General Kane saying the operation involved more than 125 U.S. aircraft, calling it the largest B-2 strike in history, and noting U.S. forces in the region remain on high alert, ready to react to any retaliation by Iran or its proxies. The general saying plans for the mission were limited to a very small circle, with very few people informed of the timing or nature of the mission. Last Thursday, President Trump announcing he would decide what to do within the next 2 weeks. The Washington Post reporting a senior administration official now says that was part of an attempt to throw the Iranians off guard. The Iranian Foreign Ministry releasing a lengthy statement in response to the bombing, condemning the action, calling it, quote, a grave and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the UN and international law. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian saying, quote, the Americans must receive a response to their aggression. And an advisor to the supreme leader of Iran, all but giving up the ruse of wanting enriched uranium for energy purposes, posting on X, quote, even if the sites were completely destroyed, the game is far from over. Enriched materials, domestic expertise, and political will are still intact. Secretary of State Marco Rubio pushing back on Iranian claims that enriched nuclear materials were moved prior to the strike.
No one will know for sure for days, but I doubt they moved it because you really can't move anything right now. And they can't move anything right now inside of Iran. I mean, the minute a truck starts driving somewhere, the Israelis have seen it and they've targeted it and taken it out. So our assessment is we have to assume that that's a lot of 60% enriched uranium buried deep under the ground there in Esfahan. They should bring it out of the ground and turn it over.
The New York Times reporting that Israeli officials do believe, based on satellite imagery from the days prior to the strikes, that the Iranians did move some uranium and equipment from the Fordo facility. The Times reporting satellite images from Maxar Technologies from around this time show 16 cargo trucks positioned near an entrance to the facility, though it is unclear what exactly, if anything, was removed. A U.S. official telling the Times it would have been unrealistic to completely move all of the equipment out of Fordo in the days since Israel began its strikes. The Iranian parliament approving the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in response to the bombings, but leaving the final decision on whether to actually close the strait to Iran's Supreme National Security Council. According to the New York Post, about 20% of the world's oil flows through the narrow shipping channel. Vice President J.D. Vance warning the move would be economic suicide for the Iranians. President Trump under fire from some on the political left and right for his bold move. Democrat Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, and U.S. Senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, calling it an unconstitutional act of war.
The mofo that resides in the White House has unilaterally, in my estimation, declared war. We have a constitution that seemingly does not matter.
Congress war powers sidelined, exposing a dangerous executive overreach that risks endless conflict without Democratic approval.
Not only is this news that I've just heard this second alarming, that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The president does not have the right.
Congresswoman AOC calling the move grounds for impeachment. National Review's Andy McCarthy concluding President Trump had all the authorization he needed for these bombings thanks to the post-9/11 Authorization for Use of Military Force, or AUMF, which has been used by many presidents to justify strikes against our enemies. A small number of Democrats supporting the action publicly. Democratic Senator from Pennsylvania John Fetterman posting to X, quote, as I have long maintained, this was the correct move by POTUS. Democrat Congressman from New York, Richie Torres, saying in a statement, quote, no one truly committed to nuclear nonproliferation should mourn the fall of Fordo. Some in the MAGA world also skeptical of the strike, fearing wider conflict with Iran. Republican Congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, posting, quote, I can also support President Trump and his great administration on many of the great things they are doing, while disagreeing on bombing Iran and getting involved in a hot war that Israel started. Israel, of course.
Highlights MAGA's internal conflict, with loyalists questioning the strike and blaming allies for dragging the U.S. into war.
Of course, was actually attacked by the Iranian-backed Hamas on 10/7/23. Vice President J.D. Vance addressing some of these concerns on NBC on Sunday, laying out a path for peace.
No, Kristen, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. And if they leave American troops out of it and they decide to give up their nuclear weapons program once and for all, then I think the president has been very clear. We can have a good relationship with the Iranians. It was only when the president decided that the Iranians were not negotiating in good faith that he took this action. But I actually think it provides an opportunity to reset this relationship, reset these negotiations, and get us in a place where Iran can decide not to be a threat to its neighbors, not to be a threat to the United States. I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. This is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying in a Pentagon press briefing, the U.S. does not intend to conduct regime change in Iran.
Official denial clashes with Trump's own hints about regime change, raising questions about true U.S. intentions and future strategy.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoing those comments Sunday on CBS.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program.
This military operation against Iran's nuclear sites has shaken the foundations of American foreign policy and domestic politics alike. Accusations of unconstitutional war, fears of broader Middle East escalation, and mixed support within parties reveal deep fractures. While officials deny regime change aims, Trump's own posts muddy the waters. The world watches as the U.S. navigates this high-stakes gamble. Drop your take below. Are these strikes justified or reckless? What's next for peace and war?